Hello, and welcome to the Partner Marketing Group Marketing Matters series. Today, we'll be talking about visual content. At the Partner Marketing Group, we're really seeing a steady increase in people looking for visual content for their marketing campaigns. And I'll share what some of those pieces are in just a bit. But first, I'd like to talk a little bit about the why. According to multiple studies, including some eye tracking studies from the Norman Nielsen Group, people spend more time reading and interacting with content with images. So you're using images to gain attention and, of course, ultimately engagement. At the core of this is the fact that most humans are visual creatures. We process information based on what we see. And in fact, according to multiple studies, about 65% of us are what is called a visual learner. There's also the issue of retention. There was a study that was done that when people heard some information, they were likely to remember only 10% of that information 3 days later. So either they heard it orally or they read it on a paper. However, when a relevant image was paired with that same information, people retained 65% of the information 3 days later. So clearly, when you pair images with content, it really allows people to retain that message longer. And then, of course, there's the ever present goldfish and attention spans. The truth is that our attention spans are falling. And there have been all sorts of studies that have been done for years that kind of equate the human attention span with that of a goldfish. And in the last study that was conducted probably 3 or 4 years ago, they concluded that we now have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. So we're talking really about seconds in order to capture somebody's attention. A really good example of why visual is so much more powerful and why any content paired with a visual is powerful is this one. On the left, we have essentially the visual image, which is a circle. And then on the right, we have the description, what it would be in text. When we think about B2B marketing and particularly technology marketing, where we have more complex information that we need to share, any place where we're able to replace lines and lines of text with an image showing a process, for example, is going to result in higher retention and more engagement. So that's the reason why visual content is so important. But what are the different pieces and how can you use them? Now, this is not an exhaustive list by all means, but I kind of pulled together what I thought is some of the most used visual content in B2B marketing. I'm going to go into detail on just a few of these, starting with images. Depending on where you use your image, there are a few things to think about. Creative images such as this one can be very effective in social media and digital ads. Any place where there's a lot of pictures or graphics competing for information or for your intention. So, for example, think about LinkedIn and how you scroll through a whole series of posts. Would this information make you stop? Very likely it would. But now, of course, we have that issue of relevancy. We don't want to just throw pictures of horse chickens into LinkedIn feeds. How is this relevant? Well, imagine you were doing an ebook on hybrid solutions, and now you're illustrating it with admittedly a very unusual hybrid, but it's making that connection. And so that hybrid, which is the underlying theme, and the image do really connect. So it's important to keep that in mind is that you need images that not only cut through the clutter, but they also definitely need to be relevant and they need to make your message more memorable. Now, in another study done by the Nielsen Norman Group, they actually showed that poor images or images that are not relevant to content or that fade into the background like these standard stock images, will do nothing to increase reader engagement. And poor photographs can actually hurt your results because people are so used to seeing them that the eye isn't even really taking them in. So when we look at the role of images in visual marketing, it has to be thoughtful and it has to add to what you're presenting to your audience. My personal plea is that it's time to expire this type of staged stock imagery. We probably jumped the shark with this when we started staging people in hard hats inside. Now, that doesn't mean no stock art. Certainly, most of us are not going to be able to go out and take our own images or create our own illustrations. Almost every image in this presentation is stock art, but it means having a good service and then the creativity to select powerful images and to get away from this into more of what I just showed. Here are two LinkedIn posts that are not as crazy as a horse chicken, but are still really compelling. In both of these cases, a key point from the offering was used to find or create the image. And that really is the way to do it. So with lean data, which we have on the left, they were looking about the alignment of sales and marketing. And the image is really kind of trying to show the alignment of two pieces. That's a great way to find creative images. So don't just focus on the title of an offer or a webinar. Focus as well on what someone might learn or a pain point that you're addressing. And then look for images that help illustrate that. Another piece of visual content is illustrations. And you can use illustrations anywhere, including social and digital, but also your website, within ebooks or white papers, presentations, for blogs. I think one of the best uses for images like this is to simplify more complex concepts, and again, that makes them really ideal for technology companies. So you can use an illustration to show a workflow or some solution concepts. Consider your own process for working with customers. Could that be presented visually? A lot of times we see bullets that say, this is what we do, and then this is the next thing we do. Can those bullets become a really compelling illustration on your site? So one tip is to kind of look at all the content on your website and decide, is there any content that could be turned into a table or an illustration or a graphic? And again, to allow you to grab people's attention more quickly. Another visual piece, and one that builds on what we discussed with illustrations, are things like infographics and use case studies. And this is a use case. And what I'm showing here is just an example, but it takes what the solution is that you're presenting and it shares it in a visual format. So the text is shorter, it's quicker. You read through it a little bit like a comic strip, is kind of how I would describe it. But it allows you again to share more complex concepts and to really show the impact of your solution on people. If you don't have a lot of case studies, this could be one way of bringing a little bit more of the person and the solution as it addresses the person's needs into your marketing. Infographics can also help you present more complex information in a more consumable and memorable format. They're also great at presenting research findings, key data points, and timelines. But don't be limited. We've created resume infographics that highlight what makes our customers different from their competitors, pulling out data like how many certified people they have on staff, how long they've been in business, how many industries they serve, how many customers they've worked with. That could be a really powerful way of differentiating you from your competition. One tip here too is if you have really good thought leadership content, like ebooks, white papers, reports, go through them and see if there are some key points or data that you could pull out and present in an infographic. So in that case, you're really kind of repurposing and extending content you already have, and it's just giving people a different way to view the content. And that could be a great way too of promoting the longer piece you have. Put the infographic out, it catches people's attention, and then really encourages them to go and download the larger piece that you have. In our recent technology marketing benchmark and trends report, we looked at all the different types of content, and there was no real surprise that 54% of respondents are using video content, and that it ranks in the top three types of content producing the best results. Video is visual, it has been growing in popularity for years, and clearly, shorter videos that quickly put a message across can be very, very valuable in your marketing. This includes animated and live video. And then with animated video, so many different styles are available to you. You know, on the lower end, we have things like explainer type videos that use existing graphics and then apply a voiceover. On the higher end, there are completely custom animations where all the images are original drawings. You can also create video out of existing content. So here is one of our LinkedIn posts, and we created a short video around the survey that we put out every year. So look at the content you have and see if there's any that might lend itself to a video. And don't forget customer stories as well when you're looking at video, because that is a really good way to share the voice of your customer. And these are some examples of just kind of putting forward a video that's a customer testimonial. It could be a testimonial from an employee about what a great place it is to work. So take some time to look at what's showing in your own feed on LinkedIn, and that can give you inspiration for what content may lend itself best to a video format. So, with that, a quick summary of some visual content. As I said, I wasn't going to touch on every single type of visual content. We work with a number of partners to create pieces like use cases, infographics, and other visual elements. If you do have any questions, please reach out to us, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.